So I wasn't able to clog the turbo, so it's gonna need to go back to stock position. So I will need to move the engine forward. I'm thinking 3 inches. There's an outlet that goes to the EGR on turbo. Actually, that's inlet. That's from the air intake for the turbo. Fresh air intake. I found a little plug in my parts bin that I can use, and I'm gonna tap the hole in the middle. It seems to be fitting quite well there, so I'm just gonna glue it on that bushing there, and I'm gonna tap it and probably put the sensor that's in the on the EGR, because that little piece of pipe right here, that's the one that goes into that plug there, and then it bolts there on the EGR, and on the EGR there's this sensor there, so I probably kind of just tap it in that little plug and call it a day. So if I need it, I can plug it in. If not, then I can just tighten it up and that's it. That's one. Now the mounts are cut off, so I can undo the drive shafts and move the engine. So I'm looking at this setup, and then the mounts for the transmission on the skid plate, they are 2 inches apart. So right now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to unmount the transmission from the skid plate. I'm going to slide it 2 inch, and I'm going to bolt the 2 bolts that goes through the skid plates in the front. So it's going to give me like 2 inches forward, and I'll see where that gets me. Also, it's going to be much easier to line up the transmission in the middle of the frame, and then it's going to help for measurement for the build. If that 2 inches is enough, that'll get me going nicely. Now if I can just lift it from the back and slide it forward, see where that gets me. Oh shoot! Lots of clearance now. That would be surprising. I think next step will be to lower the frame again, see what kind of clearance we get. That's one stud in. This is the outlet of the turbo that goes to the intake, the engine intake. This part was accommodated for that pipe, which is 2 inch, I think. All the piping I got was 2 1/4 inches, and it fits right around the casing here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut that part. this is gonna fit. There you go. There you go. I'm gonna relocate the mounts here and mount it sideways, and I'm still gonna have clearance for the downpipe to clear the mounts as well. I moved it 2 inch forward. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the skid plate, put a plate with the same angle that goes forward, and that's gonna reach to the forward bolt there. So I'm just gonna need to drop the skid plate and modify the skid plate, weld a plate on top of it, or I might actually cut a notch in it and weld the plate into the skid plate.
So this is Vince's broken bolt.
Yeah, we stripped the bolts on the skid plate, only on one side, but the three of them. So right now what I'm doing is I'm splitting right through the bolt and right through the nut and the bolt. And I'm gonna use a screwdriver and try to spread the split in it to break both ends, so we can get the skid plate off.
There we have it.
That's it. So that's what it looks like with one bolt off, and we have two to go. So we're trying to get the skid plate off, and we're able to untie all the screws on this side with a wrench. That was the way to go actually. On the other side we used the impact gun and we stripped all of them. So right now we're able to take two of them out. There's a lot of, there's no light, but we took the two forward out, and it was a lot of work trying to get that out, but we got those two out. Now we have one out to do, one left to do, and then I think there's no going around from there. I'm gonna need to do either like a bolt fix on it or put a cross member, but I'm not decided yet. Let's see once we get the skid plate down. So since I stripped the bolt on one side of the frame to mount the skid plate, I figured might as well do the cross member. So I made like a little plates that adapt on the transmission mount, and I welded the cross member yesterday. So it's a little offset. Usually people, when they do cross members, they tug it like up, but I wanted to have stock setting on the transmission so I have the proper distance from the tub. Yeah, I have a 1 inch lift on the body. The plate usually sits 2.5 inch below the frame, and so I set up the cross members so the plate sits 1.5 inches below the frame. So like this, I have the stock height. Now with the cross member in place, I can mount the engine, and I'm gonna reuse the front mounts because it's still easier for me to use the front mount to mount the engine than doing side mounts.
0.5 of a mile.
Huh. Killing it.
Because we can. But now, there's a whole new library in car show and auctions. If you love automotive, there's only one place to stream. Start your free trial today and get Motor Trend on any of your favorite devices.
the tub is in position. That's where it sits right now. I clear everything except for the intake right here. That's stuck to the tub, so I would like a better clearance. The intake to the turbo is not bad. Everything I didn't want to do, I ended up doing to make sure I have proper clearance. So I didn't want to do a cross member, but I did install the cross member. So we are the next day. I only had time to build them up yesterday, so but super happy now that it's in. Tubs in place. Everything lines up now. I'm gonna have proper clearance here. Today we're gonna install the control arms. So they need to be a little shorter. Okay, we have another little hoopsie here. Transfer case doesn't fit with the cross member. The bolts are not lining up properly. See it? But I need to rotate it counterclockwise, like maybe like a few degrees. So I think I'm gonna cut the mounting plate and lift it up because it's at its lowest point right now. So I'm gonna lift it up to the probably like half or 1 inch higher. I have a ton of clearance on the top, and my powertrain is still angled a little bit backwards, so I don't think it's gonna affect the angle too much. So I'm gonna jack up the transmission after I cut the plate and re-weld the plate like on the cross member, and I should have clearance for the transfer case. So the transfer case is off, the plate is loosened, and the transmission is jacked. So I'm going to loosen the plate. The middle section of the cross member is going to be loose, so I'm going to be able to slide it off and cut the plate on the side, so I minimize the contamination for the transmission. Then I'm going to jack the transmission a little bit higher up, make sure it doesn't affect my clearance for the engine bay, and then I'll bolt the transmission on, make sure I have proper clearance with the cross member. Then I'll bolt the plate back up and then weld the plate on the cross member, and from there I should have a good setup. There you go.
Also go ahead and splice the wires together. Go ahead and add the connector
piece of black wire and connect it to the hydrogen generator. I'm going to go ahead and splice the 3 hooks. And we're going to move the camera. I'll run the ground wire from the holy smoke! And that's why grinder is the most dangerous tool in the shop. Holy smoke! I pulled the fuse on the HHO setup. Holy! Wow! I'm back online. Hey Joe, so let's take a look inside the engine. Only took like 3 wheels to cut this. With the HHO kit, I should reduce the amount of HHO gas that I feed the generator, since the generator engine is a lot smaller than the Chevrolet Suburbans. So the blade's in position. I'm happy with the clearance I got. So I'm gonna weld it in position, actually tack it and roll it out, position the truss member and weld it. And then after that I'm gonna be ready to finish welding the cross member. And everything will be set solid. I'm good with all clearance. I looked up at the clearance for shifters. It looks good. Engine looks good. So I think I'm going to be able to put an end to this chapter.
New hydraulic roller lifters with the necessary guides, hold downs, push rods, and some new 1.52:1 ratio comp roller rocker arms that'll be held down by some posi locks. Now when it came time to topping off our engine, well, we wanted a budget-friendly cylinder head. So we picked up a pair of Summit Racing Iron 20,000s. And the cam we've got spec'd out is within that range. Now our Extreme Energy cam has a gross valve.
So I got my control arms in. Super happy. Once I pulled the stuck ones, and I loosened the control arm here on the side, everything like lined up and loosened up. It was pretty much just bolt in, everything lined up, and it was super easy. So I wanted to put the transfer case in to measure my drive shaft, my front drive shafts, and I put it in. Was able to put it in. Added some modification to the cross member so it fits. And now, when I put the drive shaft in, it flush, it dropped right in. That's a little loose, so I think I have a little bit of leeway to move the whole thing forward again. So I think I'm gonna loosen the bolts on the mounting plate there for the transmission. And I'm going to put a ratchet in the front. I'm going to pull the whole thing and try to get a little more clearance between the firewall and the engine. And then tight everything up and call it a day. So I was a little bit bumped out lately because I had so much step back. But today was a good day. Got everything figured out, and I think I'm ready to move on to the next step. So that's the closest component from the engine to the firewall. So I'm happy with that. I put a herc from the mount to the front cross member for the frame, and I was able to pull the whole thing half an inch forward. So now my drivetrain in the front is loaded a bit, and you can actually tell from the way it was sitting before, and when I reposition it, I freshly painted it, so you can see the marks now that I moved it forward. And now I just need to get like a custom rear drive shaft, and the drivetrain is all completed.